Hello, perceptive Scorpio. August 14, 2026 carries a quieter kind of turning point for you, one that may begin as a feeling before it becomes a decision. Something inside you has been changing for a while, and beneath the surface you may already know that certain beliefs, attachments, or old expectations no longer fit the person you are becoming. You have spent enough time moving through pain, uncertainty, and emotional complexity to recognize the difference between what feels familiar and what is genuinely right for you. This is where the energy asks you to look honestly at what still deserves a place in your life. The Tower suggests that an old structure has already lost its stability, even if part of you still remembers what it once gave you, while the Magician reminds you that you are not powerless in what comes next. You have more awareness, experience, and choice than you may have realized. And the question is no longer whether you can hold everything together, but whether everything you are holding still belongs there. This becomes especially meaningful around someone from your past, particularly if there was a romantic connection that never received the clarity you needed. They may still carry regret, curiosity, or unresolved feelings, but that does not automatically mean they are ready to meet you with honesty and emotional reciprocity. If a conversation reopens, pay attention not only to what is said, but to what remains vague, avoided, or unchanged. Because familiarity can feel powerful when nostalgia begins filling in the spaces that reality left behind. It may be tempting to remember the tenderness and forget the imbalance that existed alongside it. There may have been genuine love, meaningful moments, and a bond that mattered deeply, but that does not erase the ways you may have questioned your own needs while trying to preserve it. Before you reopen an old door, ask yourself whether you are drawn toward the person as they are now, or toward the feeling you once had when you believed the relationship could become something different. As you reclaim that clarity, your attention begins returning to your own life. You may feel ready to reconsider a goal, change a routine, explore a different direction in your work, or make room for something that once seemed outside your comfort zone. Your intuition could be useful here, not because it guarantees a particular outcome, but because it may help you notice which choices leave you feeling more grounded and which ones quietly pull you back into patterns you have already outgrown. There may also be an opportunity connected with work, a personal project, or another part of your daily life that asks you to think beyond what is immediately comfortable. It may require patience, effort, or a temporary adjustment in priorities. But the deeper lesson is not simply about gaining more. It is about building something that reflects the person you are now. Instead of forcing yourself toward a future just because it looks impressive from the outside, consider what kind of life would actually feel sustainable, honest, and worth investing your energy in. And this is where your transformation becomes more than a story about leaving the past behind. The real shift is learning to stop negotiating against your own needs, especially when something familiar tries to pull you back into an older version of yourself. What once felt like an impossible choice may become clearer when you stop asking what you might lose and begin asking what becomes possible when you no longer have to carry what has already served its purpose. Continue trusting the part of you that notices what others may overlook. Your intuition may draw your attention toward projects, collaborations, or environments that feel different from what you've been accustomed to. And some of these experiences could introduce you to people who expand the way you think about your own possibilities. You may find yourself learning simply by being around people whose perspectives challenge you, and that exchange can become just as valuable as the opportunity itself. This is also a meaningful time to give more attention to the projects that belong to you, especially the ideas you have carried quietly, because you were waiting for the perfect moment to take them seriously. You do not need everyone around you to understand why something matters to you before you begin. If a dream has a clear purpose behind it, allow yourself to explore it with patience and discernment, even if the path looks unconventional from the outside. At the same time, some decisions may require you to protect your own position, and that can occasionally disappoint people who are accustomed to having easier access to your time, energy, or resources. Try not to interpret their discomfort as proof that you have done something wrong. Sometimes a healthier boundary feels unfamiliar to the people who benefited from the absence of one. This becomes especially important when friendship and practical matters begin crossing into the same territory. You may have to learn where emotional loyalty ends and where clear agreements need to begin, particularly when money, work, responsibilities, or shared projects are involved. As you become more honest with yourself, new questions may surface, and you may realize that some answers cannot be forced simply because you want certainty. Give yourself enough quiet to hear what your own thoughts are saying before outside opinions become louder than your inner sense of direction. If you have been feeling disconnected from yourself, make space for something that brings you back into your own awareness. Meditation can be one way to begin, but the deeper purpose is simply to create a place where you can observe your thoughts without immediately reacting to every one of them. Let your energy move somewhere constructive instead of allowing every distraction, opinion, or emotional current around you to pull you off course. For Scorpio, being more selective with your attention can be far more powerful than trying to control everything happening around you. There is also a sense that the effort you have already invested in your goals, projects, and personal growth is beginning to reveal its value in ways you may not have expected. What once felt slow or uncertain can begin to feel more responsive, as though a path that required constant pushing is finally giving you room to move with greater ease. This does not mean every obstacle disappears, but your relationship with those obstacles can change, and that change may make progress feel more natural. You are learning that strength does not always mean exerting more force. Sometimes it means recognizing when the ground beneath you is finally ready to support the next step. The Tower speaks directly to that realization. For Scorpio, this card can be understood less as destruction and more as the moment when something hidden becomes impossible to ignore, revealing which parts of your life were already too fragile to carry you forward. Obstacles in love, work, or finances may have demanded repeated sacrifices, but the deeper question is whether those sacrifices were still creating something meaningful or simply keeping an old structure standing. As that distinction becomes clearer, you may feel less compelled to preserve what has already shown you its limitations and more willing to build from a foundation that reflects who you are now. The Empress then changes the quality of that rebuilding. Instead of asking you to push harder, she invites you to consider what deserves nourishment, consistency, and room to grow. Your creative ideas, personal projects, relationships, and sense of self-worth all need more than intensity. They need conditions in which they can actually thrive. This is where your regenerative nature becomes meaningful, not as a promise of effortless abundance, but as an ability to take what you have learned, reshape it, and create something more sustainable from it. Justice brings another layer of clarity by asking you to examine reciprocity. If you have experienced betrayal, disappointment, or relationships where you carried more than your share, this symbolism encourages you to look at the balance between what you give and what you receive rather than waiting for someone else to correct it for you. In matters involving agreements, contracts, or important decisions, careful attention and clear judgment are more valuable than assuming that everything will automatically work in your favor. The real shift is learning to make choices from self-respect rather than resentment, retaliation, or the need to prove that you were right. In relationships, that same discernment becomes especially important when someone from your past still seems drawn to the person you have become. Their interest may be genuine, but interest alone does not tell you whether the underlying dynamic has changed. If they approach you, notice the consistency behind their words, and ask yourself whether you are responding to the person standing before you, or to the memory of what you once hoped the relationship could become. Your quiet confidence does not need to chase, convince, or perform. It simply allows you to observe whether the connection can meet you where you are now. The star offers a softer perspective after all of this questioning. It does not need to promise that everything will suddenly fall into place. Instead, it represents the kind of hope that becomes possible when you stop demanding that the future resemble the past. You may begin to see different directions, people, and projects with greater openness, not because every path is guaranteed to lead somewhere perfect, but because fear no longer has to make every unfamiliar choice feel dangerous. Your intuition can help you explore what is ahead while still allowing you to remain grounded in your own judgment. And as you move through these changes, remember that your body is part of the process too. If you are experiencing significant or persistent tension in your shoulders or neck, especially if the discomfort is severe or worsening, it is worth speaking with an appropriate healthcare professional, rather than simply pushing through it. Your body may need rest support or a different kind of care, and listening to those signals is not weakness. It is another form of self-awareness as you continue learning what it means to build a life that can truly hold the person you are becoming. If your body has been carrying persistent tension, especially around the shoulders or neck, give yourself permission to respond to it, instead of simply pushing through. Sometimes the body holds onto the pressure that the mind has been trying to manage quietly, and you may not notice how much strain you are carrying until you finally slow down enough to feel it. A massage or another appropriate form of care may help ease ordinary muscular discomfort, but if pain is severe, persistent, or getting worse, it is important to seek professional medical advice rather than assuming rest alone will solve it. You may also feel drawn toward a slightly more demanding form of movement, especially after spending long hours working or carrying stress. But the right routine is the one that supports your body instead of becoming another demand you have to meet. Remember that your body does not need to follow someone else's definition of discipline. What restores one person may leave another feeling depleted, so pay attention to what genuinely helps you feel more present, comfortable, and alive. You may need movement one day and deeper recovery the next, and recognizing that difference is part of becoming more attentive to yourself rather than less disciplined. For Scorpio, this can be part of a larger lesson about control. You do not have to overpower every uncomfortable feeling in order to move through it. Sometimes the wiser response is to listen closely, adjust your pace, and allow your energy to return naturally without treating every pause as something that needs to be overcome. When it comes to work, if you have made mistakes, meet them directly rather than allowing embarrassment to make you withdraw. Taking responsibility, correcting what you can, and remaining proactive will tell others far more about your character than the mistake itself, especially if you are temporarily under greater scrutiny from people above you. You do not have to pretend that everything went perfectly. You simply need to show that you can learn, adapt, and remain capable when circumstances become less comfortable. There is also something valuable in refusing to let one difficult moment become a story about your entire ability, because a mistake can reveal where a process needs to change without becoming a verdict on who you are. If you are searching for work, remember that competition does not mean you should make yourself smaller or hesitate to speak about what you know. Let your actual skills, experience, and way of thinking become visible instead of waiting for someone else to discover them for you. You may be more qualified than you initially give yourself credit for, particularly if you have become accustomed to focusing on what you still need to improve rather than what you already bring to the table. An interview or professional conversation can be approached in the same spirit. You do not need to oversell yourself, but you should be willing to explain clearly what you can contribute and why your experience has prepared you for the role. Confidence here is not about performing superiority. It is about allowing your real capabilities to be seen without apologizing for them. Your financial life also benefits from this shift toward measured confidence. Rather than assuming that every obstacle is about to disappear or that abundance is guaranteed, look at where old habits of overexertion may have shaped the way you earn, spend, save, or make decisions. You may have learned to associate security with constant vigilance, as though you must always anticipate the next problem before you can relax, and that mindset can become exhausting even when your circumstances are stable. You may be able to create more security by becoming more deliberate, especially around contracts, creative work, stalled projects, or opportunities that deserve careful consideration before you commit. The goal is not simply to have more resources, but to develop a steadier relationship with them so that your choices are guided by clarity rather than fear. This is where your intuition can work alongside practical judgment. Let yourself notice an idea that feels promising, but give it enough structure to determine whether it actually makes sense before putting your resources behind it. Ask what the opportunity requires from you, what it realistically offers, and whether it supports the kind of life you are trying to build rather than simply satisfying the urge to make something happen. Small, thoughtful choices can sometimes create more lasting stability than dramatic moves made from impatience, and your strength here comes from knowing when to act and when to wait. The deeper financial lesson is not about proving how much you can accumulate. It is about creating a relationship with security that does not require you to remain constantly tense or in control, allowing your resources to serve your life instead of becoming another source of pressure. In love, honesty becomes especially important. If you are in a relationship and something from the past needs to be acknowledged, resist the urge to defend yourself with excuses or turn an uncomfortable conversation into an emotional battle. Explain what happened as clearly as you can, take responsibility for your part, and allow your partner to understand the person behind the mistake rather than only the mistake itself. You may not be able to control how they initially respond, and that uncertainty can be uncomfortable, but giving them the truth creates a more genuine foundation for understanding than trying to manage their reaction. A disagreement does not automatically threaten the relationship, especially when both people are willing to listen, repair what was hurt, and return to one another with greater understanding. And if things are already peaceful between you and your partner, allow yourself to appreciate that simplicity instead of searching for a hidden problem. Not every meaningful moment needs to arrive through intensity. Sometimes emotional security is found in the ordinary experience of being understood, sharing a quiet moment, and being able to speak without fear of how the other person will respond. There can be a tendency to mistake emotional intensity for depth, particularly when a relationship has been shaped by uncertainty. But calm does not mean something is missing. For Scorpio, that kind of ease can be deeply significant because it asks you to trust what is steady rather than assuming that love must always be tested to prove that it is real. If you are single, be willing to accept what someone's actions and feelings are actually showing you, even when the answer is different from what you hoped to hear. The person who interests you may have priorities, desires, or emotional availability that do not align with what you want, and recognizing that does not diminish your worth or make the connection meaningless. Sometimes a connection can be genuine and still not be capable of becoming the relationship you imagined. And accepting that distinction can save you from spending months trying to persuade circumstances to become something they are not. You can still appreciate someone and enjoy their presence while also acknowledging that attraction alone may not be enough to create the kind of relationship you are ready for. Give yourself room to let that truth settle without immediately trying to change it. You do not have to force an outcome simply because uncertainty makes you uncomfortable, and you do not have to turn a disappointment into a judgment about your future in love. Instead, allow yourself to observe what the connection teaches you about your own needs, boundaries, and expectations, because sometimes clarity arrives through recognizing what you no longer want to negotiate. Compatibility becomes clearer when you stop trying to make one particular connection become everything you hoped for, leaving more emotional space for a relationship that can meet you with the same honesty and depth you are learning to offer yourself. Within the home and family sphere, this same movement toward honesty and understanding begins to soften the atmosphere around you. Old tensions do not have to be solved through one dramatic conversation. Sometimes they begin changing because you respond differently, communicate more clearly, and stop carrying responsibilities that were never entirely yours. You may notice that when you no longer react automatically to familiar triggers, conversations that once escalated begin to lose some of their old momentum, creating room for people to meet you differently. As you become more conscious of what you need and how you relate to the people closest to you, the space around you can gradually begin to reflect that inner shift, making the home feel less like a place where old patterns are repeated and more like a place where something new is quietly taking shape. Some of the family patterns that once created tension may begin to feel different as you change the way you participate in them. You do not have to convince everyone to grow with you, and you cannot carry responsibility for every relationship under your roof, but your willingness to respond with greater awareness can quietly influence the atmosphere around you. Sometimes the most meaningful shift happens through small gestures of consistency, a calmer response, a boundary expressed without anger, or simply being present without trying to force a conversation before everyone is ready. You may begin to notice that when you stop reacting from an old emotional reflex, other people have less reason to repeat the same pattern with you, and that alone can create a different rhythm within the home. This can create room for old resentment to lose some of its grip. That does not mean every difficult history disappears or that every family member suddenly understands one another. But there may be more space for people to respect their differences without turning those differences into another source of conflict. You may also become more aware of which family responsibilities genuinely belong to you and which ones you have been carrying simply because you were used to stepping in. When shared responsibilities, practical decisions, or unresolved matters arise, aim for fairness rather than trying to prove who was right, because being understood is not always the same thing as winning an argument. Your steadiness can become reassuring to the people you love, especially when they are dealing with challenges of their own, and your personal growth can gradually change the emotional character of the home without requiring you to control the outcome. Your own energy may feel somewhat uneven, so pay attention to the moments when your body and mind are asking for a slower pace. You may notice that your motivation is easier to access earlier in the day and becomes less reliable as you move through your responsibilities, which makes it worthwhile to handle important tasks before your energy becomes scattered. Rather than judging yourself for having a quieter period, work with your natural rhythm and avoid postponing everything until you are already tired. You do not need to turn every day into a test of endurance, especially when a thoughtful adjustment could accomplish more than forcing yourself through exhaustion. A simpler solution may also appear around an issue that has been occupying your thoughts, particularly when you stop approaching it from the same angle that kept making it feel complicated, and allow yourself to consider a possibility you had previously overlooked. At the same time, be careful not to mistake temporary energy for unlimited capacity. You may have enough enthusiasm to take on more than your body can comfortably sustain, but pushing past your limits can turn motivation into exhaustion. Give yourself appropriate recovery, stay aware of physical signals, and take reasonable precautions with your personal belongings when you are traveling, exercising, or moving through busy places. There is nothing weak about recognizing when you have reached a natural limit. In fact, knowing where that limit is can help you use your energy more intelligently. These small acts of awareness may seem ordinary, but they support the larger lesson running through this reading. Strength is not measured by how much pressure you can absorb before you finally stop, but by how consciously you decide where your energy is worth spending. If you are studying, working toward an academic goal, or taking classes remotely, consistency will matter more than trying to make up for everything at once. Show up when you are supposed to. Give your attention to what is in front of you. And remember that reliability is part of building trust in yourself. Being late occasionally does not define your ability, but repeated carelessness can create unnecessary obstacles. So take responsibility before a small habit becomes something that limits you. You may sometimes feel that one missed task or one delayed commitment does not matter. Yet these small choices accumulate over time and shape the way you experience your own discipline. You already know how to be capable and responsible. This is simply about bringing that part of yourself forward with more intention, especially when no one else is there to remind you. In your connections with other signs, Sagittarius may bring an interesting sense of shared perspective. You could find yourselves agreeing on priorities, exchanging ideas easily, or approaching a decision from surprisingly similar angles, which can make collaboration feel natural. With Cancer, the connection may feel more emotionally responsive, offering a warmer atmosphere in which you can share enthusiasm while still feeling understood. Libra may bring another kind of ease through conversation, humor, and the ability to look at a problem from more than one side, helping something that initially seemed complicated become easier to discuss. Each dynamic can highlight a different quality that may feel valuable to you. Intellectual openness, emotional reassurance, or the ability to create balance through communication. These connections do not have to be treated as fixed predictions about who belongs in your life. Think of them instead as different relational qualities you may appreciate. Shared vision with Sagittarius, emotional warmth with Cancer, and balanced communication with Libra. What matters most is not the label attached to another person, but how the connection makes room for honesty, respect, individuality, and mutual effort. A compatible connection should not require you to silence important parts of yourself just to preserve harmony, nor should closeness demand that you abandon your boundaries. That is the standard your own growth is teaching you to notice more clearly, and it may change the way you recognize meaningful relationships as they develop. Scorpio, as you continue sitting with these themes, remember that the value of a reading is not that it decides what your life must become. Astrology can offer language for patterns you may already be sensing, giving shape to feelings that can sometimes be difficult to explain. But you remain the person who chooses how to respond to them, what to carry forward, and what deserves to be released. You do not have to accept every message literally. Sometimes the most useful part of a reading is simply the question it leaves you with. If these reflections gave you something useful to consider, you are welcome to support the channel with a like, subscribe, if you want to stay connected to this space, and turn on notifications so you can return whenever another reading speaks to you. Thank you for the trust you bring into this space and for allowing yourself to listen with an open mind. Whether a particular message resonates immediately or simply gives you a question to sit with, your own experience remains the most important part of the process. There is value in noticing what feels true, questioning what does not, and allowing your understanding to evolve as your circumstances change. May this chapter continue to bring you greater clarity, steadier self-trust, and a deeper sense of peace as you keep discovering what genuinely belongs in the life you are building, while allowing the next layer of that understanding to reveal itself in its own time.